you tell me when you'd like me to start this timer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hi everyone. Thank you for coming today to Courageous Conversations by the Mind Gym. So I'm Claire, I'm one of the Learning and Development Partners here at ASOS, and I'll be looking after you today. So are you all familiar with the Mind Gym sessions, what they're about? No? Okay, that's fine. So I'll give you a bit of detail just so you can understand a bit more about them. So they are an organisation that specialise in bite-sized learning sessions. They're designed to be really fun, really interactive, and really dynamic with lots of participation. They've designed over 80, 90-minute sessions on various topics, and the idea is that we learn and take in more information when it's shorter sessions. So it is going to be fast-paced. I'm going to be asking you lots of questions, getting you to do lots of different activities. So just be really open-minded. Make sure you share your experiences as well, because that's always the best thing. And any questions that you have, please don't hesitate to ask them as well. Okay? Just to give you some insight into my experience with Courageous Conversations, previous to this role, I have been a manager before in different businesses. I was a manager of about a team of 12 in my early 20s, which was quite challenging. So I've had various different challenging or courageous conversations with people. One of which to note is I was working for an organisation that I created a management training programme, and it was all about getting sales advisors to that next level and trying to nurture talent from within. It was really successful. People had really developed their careers and gone on to management roles, but in the second year the organisation was suffering financially, so every department was asked to make a cut, and in our department my manager decided that the cut was going to be this programme, which I fundamentally disagreed with, because I felt it was a big mistake, because it was all about nurturing talent and actually, developing people from within, and if you take that away, that could be really detrimental. So I then had to deliver a conversation to 5 people I'd already taken on to that programme and said they were going to be doing it for the next 12 months. So they were obviously really excited, and I had to then have that call with them and let them know that it wasn't going to be happening anymore, and potentially shatter their dreams really, which was very, very difficult. And I wish, in a way, I'd had a bit more of these techniques from this session to help me to prepare for those conversations, because I tried to steer away from doing it because I knew it was going to be really, really difficult. But actually, I'm glad I did do it, because I'd built that relationship with them, so it was better coming from me that they knew than someone that they didn't know. So here at ASOS, we're probably going to have lots of courageous conversations at different times. It might be to tell a supplier we don't want to use them anymore. It might be tell a candidate that actually they haven't got the position they wanted to get, or maybe it's performance managing. So loads of different scenarios, and hopefully this session will give you some tools to develop in preparing for those conversations. How does that sound?
Sounds fun.
Good. Good, yes, it will be fun. Okay, so just to give you what's going to happen over the next 90 minutes, because it is quite fast-paced. So we're going to be focusing, first of all, on what courageous conversations are. So what are they? Why do we have them? What situations arise when we have them? What stops us having them? What makes them hard? So I'm going to get you to really delve into that and think about why. Then we're going to look at 4 different tactics on how we can manage them. So we're going to look at preparing for them. So what are the key things that we need to do to make sure we're fully prepared? How are we going to tell that story? So what are the key factors we need to know and have before we actually enter into that conversation to make sure that we get the right outcome? And how do we listen properly as well? Because we're all guilty at times of not listening fully to people. So actually making sure that we are listening to exactly what people are telling us and empathising with that. So some different tips and hints around that. We're also going to look at how to manage reactions and emotions as well, because courageous conversations generally have a lot of emotion within them. So actually preparing for those emotions and how are we going to deal with them when they do happen as well, because that can be the differentiation between it going the right way and completely the wrong way. And we'll be looking this afternoon at next steps, so in the second half of the session, the next steps piece and how it relates to your situation as well, and just thinking about how you can use that for your personal situation, and 5 tips to take away with you. Okay, how does that sound? Good. Okay, great. Well, let's start. So I'm going to just open out what is a courageous conversation? Anyone?
It's about a subject that you're not comfortable with, or you're expecting that the person that you're having the conversation with is going to react badly to.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else?
One that you'd probably rather avoid. So
Okay.
you have to kind of turn on to beast mode to have it. Like
Yeah.
lion, like law.
Yeah.
That's a good way.
And also on that point, one that you've put off and put off and
Yes.
put off, and the longer you've put it off, the bigger it gets
Yeah.
and the scarier it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people do that more often because of the fear of what's going to happen. People don't want to have conflict, they don't like confrontation, they're worried about what's going to be said. So actually in their head they think, if I don't tackle this now, it'll just go away, it'll be fine. But actually it really doesn't.
It can also be something though that can happen quite suddenly and in the moment, and
Yeah.
that's sometimes what makes it difficult, is that if you're not expecting it and you sometimes react in a way that you think, oh my goodness, I wish I'd had time to think about X, Y and Z before, and maybe feel a bit cornered, and that's quite difficult sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's it, because I think there's two different types. You can have the ones that you know you need to have, that you can prepare for, and then those ones that are reactionary, that just happen and they're like, right, I need to talk to you, or
Yeah.
can we just go and have a conversation? And you're then in that moment, and you can prepare for that. It's about the different types of ways that you can do that, and I guess it's looking at how can I step back from it, just listening and then reflecting and then going in. You can say no at that moment and have 5 minutes and then go into it.
Yeah.
But we'll look at all those things. So I just want you to take a yes.
I've got another one on
Yeah,
that point though.
absolutely,
It's one that you kind of should have in the moment in front of other people as well. Kind of like calling someone out on something, but doing it in a tactful way that doesn't make them look like an idiot.
Yeah. So how do you think we can do that in a good way?
I know.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on that? Has anyone had that happen to them?
Cows definitely.
No, I wasn't. I was just
She
thinking, I'm
definitely
sure it
says-
has, but I can't
Yeah.
think of an example.
Well, I think it's a really good point, because it does happen, and I think
Yeah.
sometimes, especially in a management role as well, if you're not familiar with how your team respond and have that awareness, that's when it can be difficult.
Yeah.
Because we have different perceptions and different thoughts, and that's really what it's all about. So if I didn't know that Kat, in fact Kat's probably not the best example, if I didn't know Laura was a crier, and I needed to give her a piece of feedback that was going to potentially make her cry, and I did that in front of Adam and Kat and Anna, and I said, you know what, Laura, actually today I just didn't think you did that presentation very well at all. In front of everyone, she's probably going to sit there and just go,
Yeah.
oh my God. And that's really, really awful situation for her to be in, because
Yes.
it's going to make her feel very deflated, disheartened. Everyone else probably is going to feel a bit awkward, and therefore the outcome's not going to be good. So I think it's really about knowing how, not how tough each person is, but what they can and can't take. Okay, so I just want you to have a moment to think about a potential courageous conversation that you maybe need to have in the future. And if there isn't one, maybe one that you've had before, okay? And one that you're happy to share, by the way, as well, so you feel comfortable. Do you all have one?
Yes.
Yes.
Thinking,
Yeah? Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is, I'd just like us in pairs to discuss a couple of things around that particular situation. So I'd like you to talk about that conversation that you need to have or have had, okay? And I want you to then also think about what makes a conversation courageous, and why are they so hard to have sometimes? What stops us from having them? So those key points.
Does it have to be work related?
No, if you'd rather it be personal, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, so if I... Laura, do you want to work with Anna?
Yes.
Yes. So in your pairs, I'm going to give you 3 minutes, okay, to discuss your experience and those questions.
I come and sit on the back.
Yeah, awesome. So,
Yes.
who-
Okay, so my competition
it's me, I think.
My conversation is
So she's on holiday at the moment. It's really useful. And just no.
It's really great for her.
She's quite different to me as well. She gets everything, she takes it personally. And I know that she's going to be upset about it. And that's why I'm really difficult. So that's what's strong. Yes. And I know that she might talk to me and she wouldn't really need that person as well. And it's really good. She's kind of thinking about what she does.
No, just yes, so not tactics, just right.
Okay. Cool. So, what's Sarah is
Shit.
Like twisted it. Like, oh, I think like,
Yeah.
oh, God, she's hating it, blah, 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 make it sound really like,
Yeah.
no, that's not what I'm doing. She's ridiculous, things. And I made a
it's
something like
yeah,
her.
an issue.
And she's twisted it and said, oh, she's going to drag her out the teeth.
Not paying the most professional
Oh my God. So you need to have that chat.
Let's have a conversation.
So look, that's
in
not.
relation to that particular
I
person.
wouldn't speak to her, but also I know that whatever I say to her,
I don't want to
she'll go back to the boss again.
Did you have any
piss
news
off
for
this
the
guy
boss?
or build a positive working relationship with myself.
Right, of course, yeah.
So
But she's leaving in a
yeah,
couple of weeks.
So that's, yeah, you still need that chat.
But as soon as
tone,
conversation
yes,
is
absolutely, yes, it's hard.
what
because
bothers me
obviously
more is that she
That's
in that
Yeah, that's.
then regardless of the fact she shouldn't, I would have a shit. We are friends.
yeah.
Why should I go back to interest things? That's the
So that's the kind of what, that's the outcome, not only
Get on with it and do
it.
Okay, so if you want to wrap up your
Yes.
conversation.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I need to have that chat with her and say, you know that conversation yet?
Okay, so I'm going to pause you there. Sorry.
I'm really ranting now.
That's good. It's good you're like getting it all out.
so
That's
much, I didn't
fine.
get my story.
This can sometimes feel like therapy, so that's fine. That's good. Okay, so what makes a conversation courageous?
Well, mine was about, I need to tell my mum that I don't want to invite my step-cousins to my wedding.
Okay.
She's going to take that very personally, and she's insane and thinks it's her wedding. So
Okay.
it's all going to be very personal, and she is going to kick off.
Okay.
And so I'm putting it off, very much so, because I don't want to upset her.
Okay.
And I don't want her to think that I'm evil either, because I'm not. I don't think they're evil. The step-cousins are evil.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think Kat's was like, she's been let down by an alleged friend. She needs to,
Yeah, so somebody who I know, there's a group of us that are friends, and one of them has basically relayed some information to one of our friends' bosses that's put her in a very compromising position,
Right.
which is really bad. And obviously I need to have a conversation with her to say, why would you ever dream of having that conversation with her? Like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen us have that conversation. I probably need to arrange to see us have a conversation, but we're not close friends. We're like all work colleagues that used to work
Okay.
together.
Okay.
So yeah, interesting.
what makes that a courageous conversation, I'd say, is that you weren't expecting it. It's a bit of out of the blue.
Left field kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah, I think it's kind of almost the first of all, how do you tackle the trust issue and then the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And yeah, why would you do that to someone who's allegedly a friend of yours? That's that right. You know, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And I know that she'll potentially react in a certain way, which is
So you're prepared for that happening. Okay, so thinking about then what stops us, so you're kind of saying that you know how she's going to react, potentially it's not going to be very nice. Laura, you were saying your aunt's going to kick off, you don't want that conflict. So a lot of it, when we put things off, it is because of those reasons, isn't it? and we feel nervous about how we're going to have those conversations. We don't want to have that conflict with that person.
Personal discomfort.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Generally. It's
yeah.
just like, I just want a quiet life.
Yeah.
Why are you all so difficult?
Yeah, absolutely, that's totally right. So I'm going to just give you these handouts now because I'm going to refer to a couple of pieces in there. So if you can just open it initially, so just open the first piece. And
So we're not allowed to read the whole thing then?
No, basically we're not allowed to read the whole thing. So you'll see here at the top there's what are they, okay? So some research was done by Patterson that basically suggests that courageous conversations are really, it's when the stakes are high, emotions are really raw as well. And a lot of the time it's that fight or flight. So when we have those kind of conversations, we're going to go one way or the other way, okay? And that's our natural instinct to do that. So some of us will retreat and withdraw because they don't want the conflict or the confrontation. Other people, as I'm learning about Adam, want to have that stand-up shouting match and attack.
I didn't know that.
So it's really, and if you know the person as well and you know how they're going to react, that can make it more difficult too. So this cycle here that you can see is really looking at the process that a courageous conversation can go into. Why do you think it's a cycle?
Because you can go round and round and never reach an outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also that you don't necessarily have to do them in an order. So these things are things that you should do, but it doesn't necessarily matter which way you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to your point as well. Ideally, we want to be able to prepare for that conversation, but actually sometimes someone can come over to you and have that straight away, instigate it and straight away tell you their story, and you then have to just listen, manage, etc. So you don't always have that time to be able to prepare. That's the ideal, to be able to do that.
You might be managing a reaction first because they might be really, really angry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's how we prepare for that, how we do that, without ourselves getting emotionally heightened with it as well. Because naturally, if someone's attacking you,
Yes, defensive.
you're going to get defensive and then end up probably having a bit of a battle with that person. I read some really interesting research as well about how most murder victims are killed by someone that they know or they love, which I found really interesting because actually it just shows how emotional we can get, especially with people that we know really, really well. And you'll probably, I'm sure, if you have loved ones, friends, family, you'll be more emotive with them than perhaps your work colleagues because we feel we're allowed to, or we can.
Yeah.
And it's actually about managing that, I think. Once I had to have a conversation with one of my direct reports in my last role, and she's a really cool dresser, she was really edgy, she just wore whatever she wanted to, and one day she came in wearing shorts, and the protocol was not to wear shorts at work.
How short was she talking?
They were quite short. She did have tights on, but they were quite short. But for me, I didn't really have a problem with it because I thought, she's pretty cool, it looks good, she can pull it off. But I had an email from my deputy director saying, Claire, Alice is wearing shorts and you're not meant to, so please can you tell her that she can't wear those shorts. I felt very, in the grand scheme of things, this is a really big deal, but actually, you know what, I need to think about the wider impact as well. So actually, if someone sees her wearing shorts and we've said, no, you're not allowed to wear shorts, then they're going to probably wear shorts and then it will just filter. So I then had to have a conversation with her to say, okay, Alice, you're wearing shorts today. You know you're not meant to wear shorts, so I just need you to not wear them again. You look really good, but actually it's not part of the uniform, so don't wear them again. And because I knew Alice really well and I knew how she would react, she straight away felt really upset about it. She was really, oh my God, if someone said something. She knew straight away someone had said something to me because she knew I wouldn't have thought it. But because I didn't want to make it even worse by saying, yeah, Yasmin actually came to me and said about it, I just said, it doesn't matter you just need to not wear the shorts again. So just don't wear them again, wear them at the weekend when you look lovely, it's fine, and don't think about it anymore, and then just take it on board. But because I knew how she was going to react, I was able to manage that accordingly. And I think that's where this is really important, because you're able to prepare for how that person's going to react. So you can now flick down. Okay, so you can see here there's a section that says prepare. So in your group, in your pairs even, I would like you to just think about your conversation that you've just discussed, and I will give you a pen. And I'd like you to think about what do I want to achieve, and you need to think about it in all respects. So for you, what is the outcome that you want to have for it? For me, with my conversation with Alice, my outcome was for her to not wear shorts again. Okay. So then you want to think about, for that person, what's the outcome for that person? So for Alice, I didn't want her to get into greater trouble if I didn't tell her and she wore them again, and the director then spoke to her about it. And then what's in it for the relationship as a whole as well. So for me, by saying that, you know, we've got transparency, honesty between us. And then also think about, if I really wanted these things, how am I going to behave? So my story is a very small story. It's not, you know, a massively deep one. But thinking about your situation, how am I going to behave if I get these things? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you work together in your pairs on your conversation to fill this out, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that.
I need to tell him he's a loser. He doesn't see my mum there anymore. He rarely sees our friends anymore. He's just like gone into a little shell. Yeah, a shell. So I'll speak to him what do I want to achieve for me. For me. Yeah, but also feel like I'm doing it for the greater good.
People I know.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing it for my family.
That's always important.
Yeah.
What I want for them to have a moment, almost an epiphany. Have a moment of wow. Okay, this is my, for them, a moment of yes, I'm a loser. The relationship.
So for them, to be comfortable with my decision.
It's true. It's true. What did you say?
I've said, for me, I would say it's less about the fact that relationship acceptance and so on. We had a conversation.
In writing, so
I thought it was just a conversation. And also for you, it's the first impression is why every regard to different friends.
Yeah.
So I need to, for me, I would understand why she did that.
Yeah, and is it worth going in with that mindset of positive intention? Like, maybe she didn't throw her in the bus, maybe she was just like, it happened by accident, like she mentioned. I don't know, there might be something that's more needs to be behind it. And for a relationship, a greater brotherhood.
Sort of how do you manage your reaction to how the mum reacts, to kind of take emotion out of it?
I think what she would want her to feel, I want her to feel aware.
Yeah, the consequences.
Yeah, and just prepare it in the sense that she knows like she just hear what she wants to do.
She done this before, has she?
Not to her,
Right.
just see it through. It's a whole
just another 30 seconds.
so just like maybe rein it in.
Yeah, because if this is your style, then it's effectively what you have to move. You could be that kind of like rude awakening.
Yeah.
Rather than just saying it in the moment. It's just about being sure as well. Yeah. Because then you're like go, I mean literally carry child as well. I can go to part like showing teenager.
Okay,
So you need self-awareness to make sure you don't
pause
do
you
that.
there.
Sure.
So, what do you think are the potential implications if you don't prepare properly for a courageous conversation?
Carnage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Carnage?
I know for me as well, with my mum, it affects my dad, my brother would get involved, and you know, there's so much impact from people when she's not happy, you know, the bongo drums go and it's then all my fault, so it's like not just about with one, it's with everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be huge.
And I heard you talking about parent-child reactions.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah.
Do you think you could just explore that a bit more?
So I guess, you know, obviously it's my mum. I think the difficulty is that I need to avoid that parent-child thing because I still have the tendency to be the stronger teenager because she's still my mum, do you know what I mean? But actually we're adults now. She needs to be able to hear what I have to say, and I need to be mindful that I can't stand my feet and get what I want all the time anymore. So it's kind of, for myself, being more mature about it, I think.
And having that self-awareness?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What else do you think you need to prepare for when going in for that conversation? When thinking about your particular ones?
I think for me it's definitely making sure that you hear both sides, but you invite both sides of the conversation rather than just saying, well, here's what I think. It's kind of not doing that first. I think in my particular circumstance I would go in there and invite them to talk to me about the issue that I can see before me, and start it that way round.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. So almost you have in your mind what you want to talk about with them,
Yeah,
but you slightly flip it over on its head to
Yeah.
get them to...
yeah.
To perhaps-
Start it in an open way.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Has anyone else ever done that before in that style?
I think that is specifically that style to the situation. My one is about my brother, who hasn't seen my mum and dad for ages, and hasn't seen any friends, and I think by me inviting him to tell me some of the story, he wouldn't even know. His awareness is so low that it would involve me telling my story first before he then came up with his, and that's when there's slight differences with that. So.
Okay. So let's think about then the next stage. So we've talked a lot about the preparing piece and how important that is so that you can manage any reactions that come up. You can prepare confidently so that you know what you need to say and have all those facts as well. So how about when we actually are telling the person what it is we want to say, what kind of things would you be doing? What kind of things would you be saying when you were having your conversation?
I think I will open it and just say, let's talk about ... or talk to me about this.
Yeah.
And I will be kind of just asking open questions. Okay, I'm not going to ask why at any point. I mean, I already know that why is a very defensive question. Why haven't you done this? Why, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, don't ever use the word why. It's what or how or all of that kind of using that kind of language, listening, making sure we talk about the whole subject, but also making sure that I don't capitulate and just go, oh yeah, okay, because I don't want to necessarily agree or say yes. I need to put my side of things forward as well and make sure that this person understands the impact of their behaviour.
Perfect. So, yeah, you've pretty much covered that in a nutshell. In terms of telling that story, it is very much a balance as well. So it's about getting your facts across, so the actual factual information that you need to give them, and then thinking about the feelings that you have about it. And you have to be careful about that because sometimes what you don't want to happen is for them to feel like it's a personal attack. So, because how you perceive things could be completely different to how someone else perceives it. And a really good example of this is I'm watching at the moment this programme called The Affair. I don't know if any of you have seen it. And it's about a man and a woman who have an affair, obviously, but the actual programme is split in half. And the first half of the programme is told by the man and his perception, and the second half is told by the woman and her perception of it. and the way that they've seen things are completely different. And it's so interesting because even when you see the scene that when they meet, his idea of how they've met, in his eyes, she's got her hair all long and down and she's wearing a very short dress and she's really flirty and wild. In her section of it, she's got a very long dress on, her hair's tied up, she's very reserved, he's really flirty and open with her, and it's completely different. And that's the point, because we have such different perceptions that we can't assume that someone's going to think the same as us. So if we say, this is how it makes me feel, they might say, well, I don't feel like that, so I don't understand why you feel like that. And it's actually just about asking those questions, explaining why, so that they do understand it. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
So thinking as well about the listening part, because you talked about listening as well, which again is very important. How often do you think you will actively listen in your day-to-day, honestly?
You were
Just
talking to
talking.
me yesterday, weren't
Yeah.
you? And I just went, I'm not listening to you.
Yeah.
You
We
got
tend
me
to
good.
block him out, really.
Yeah, quite easily.
I think in our jobs we have to do it, otherwise we wouldn't be very good at our job. I would suggest. It kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Perhaps sometimes you become quite experienced at pretending you're actively listening, even because you do have to look like it, even if it's a bit of a, so I think personally, I think I have to a lot every day.
Yeah. So what ways do you do that? What ways do you show that you're actively listening?
Nods, saying, yeah, good point.
But do you think that
But is that
is that actually active listening though?
It's actually asking the right questions and
Yes.
sort of encouraging them to be more forthcoming with what they are telling you and really kind of exploring behind what they're telling you, not just the front of it kind of thing.
Absolutely, because I think anyone can go, yeah, yeah,
Great talking to you again.
and actually, are you really taking it in? You know, honestly. What other things can you do to make sure that you do listen?
I mean, where I'm sort of sitting, I've got people like next to me or coming up behind me or whatever, and I always, and I make a point of doing, is turn away from my screen and look at the person.
Yeah.
Always do that. So I'm trying, not get distracted by anything that's kind of around you.
And that's
so it's
really
one
good.
thing to do.
Because not a lot of people do that, and they do that, yeah, and nod, and actually they're not taking it in. And I think when it's something like a courageous conversation, you have to really think about the environment that you're going to be doing that in as well. Because like you say, if it's something that's got to be said in front of people, thinking about the way you say it, the wording that you use, how that person's going to react, but actually, should it be done in that environment, or do we need to go away and do it because it's going to react, or there's going to be more emotions?
I also find that I have to turn what I'm thinking off when I'm listening to someone, because they'll say something and I think, oh, I need to keep that in my head because I want to say that next, and I stop listening to what they're saying and I think, but I don't want to stop them, so then I haven't heard anything else they've said, because I think I'm kind of thinking at 100 miles an hour, I'm thinking of the next thing that we need to talk about and do, or and that's, I have to actively say, stop it, keep it in the moment.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I guess listening stops when you're thinking about what you want to say, and what you want to say isn't listening to the other person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just you pick out on some really really good listeners. You know when they're a good listener, but equally you know when they're a bad listener.
Yeah.
And you can see that train of thought, and they're already thinking about the next thing to say, and you're like, you can see it.
Yeah, it's the body language as well.
Yeah.
As much like you said about turning around, but in that whole eye contact of really kind of seeing and not just kind of, sometimes you speak to people and they're just like, all over the place, and you're kind of just think you can just tell immediately that it's not sinking in, and that then comes back because they ask you about it again 5 minutes later. And it's like,
Absolutely.
that conversation.
And we're only human, and we all do that. Where what you were just talking about, Laura, about I'm thinking about what I want to say. We all do that, and actually it's about having the awareness to say, like you just have, okay, I know I want to say that, but I need to just park it and come back to it, because otherwise you're not going to fully listen to that person. We can't have a good dialogue with someone if we don't listen as well as talk. So it's very, very important. And what can happen if we don't listen properly to someone? What's the implication?
they feel unheard, quite literally. I know that sounds so literal, but not being heard is not a nice feeling. It's demotivating, it's hurtful, especially if it's, you know, your manager, for example. That can really have an impact if you feel like that person isn't listening to you, because they should be there to hear your voice.
Absolutely.
I think it's massive. The
They-
impact it can
Yeah, they won't come back to you again. You won't, that crazy conversation will be even harder next time.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Okay, good. So how do we feel now about doing this in practice? So we've talked a lot about how we're going to prepare it, and we've talked about how to get your story across in the right manner, and how to listen correctly to someone as well. So I always feel the best way to do this is by actually doing it in practice. So I'm going to give you a scenario that I'd like you to act out in your pairs. I'm not going to ask you to stand up and do it in front of the group. So let me just give you can stay in your pairs. So I'm going to give you your brief. I'm going to give you a moment to read it. Don't show your partner just rip your brief. So there's your one. Okay. So just take a moment to read through it. Okay. Do we all feel comfortable?
Yeah.
can we couple more minutes?
Pardon?
Couple more minutes.
You just take another minute to have a look, and then I need you to. So when you're ready, I'd like you to start having this conversation and really get into character, and then we'll debrief afterwards. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, okay, to have this conversation.
Hey,
So you played a role in the
I'm managing.
Okay, right, okay.
How you doing?
I've got some concerns.
Yeah, I'm alright.
Good, good. I just want to take this opportunity to just really catch up and just
I've got some
find out,
concerns about
first of all, how are you?
you know, I've noticed
Alright.
that
Yeah?
things have changed.
Okay,
being your normal shoes.
how do you feel you've been,
Um,
how do you feel that you've been at work recently? How do you feel?
tired.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
And
Just okay?
this hasn't just been noticed by me.
Yeah,
it's
you
been
know,
noticed by
being okay,
sort of
doesn't
others
matter.
around you.
Okay.
So, could you
Stuff
talk to
going on
me
in
a bit
work
about
or
what's
outside of
going on?
work as well?
Bit of both.
Okay. Okay. What do you,
Could you share?
so a bit of both. Okay. How do you feel that's, do you think that's potentially impacting your work
Yes,
or?
my uncle Bob.
Maybe.
Okay. What things are happening that you might be impacting?
Right.
Some stuff going on with the family.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't want to get into detail.
No, of course. I just want you to know that any things like that, in or out of work, you know, your manager, I
So
think
it's just
if you feel like it's impacting work, then you can come to me at any time. You know, I want you to feel comfortable talking about it because I want to help. More than anything, though, you know, the more I know, the more I can help you. You know, to help me help you.
yeah.
How do you feel your behaviour might be coming across to other people at the moment?
I guess it's just going on.
Maybe that I don't really care
me tell you what I've seen.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
do you?
I've seen a couple of times recently you turned up late to work on a couple of occasions. I know that's out of character for you. And I've seen that you seem, like you say, unfocused. And I think that's not just come across mentally, but also physically. I've seen those. I've seen some changes there as well. And I'm only saying this with the best intentions that I know that you are not usually like this, and I know that you're better than that. I've seen you come to work early before, I've seen you come to work in really tip-top condition, and that's the way I would love you to work every single day. Is that fair?
Making sure that you work.
So what can we do to
So, about 30 more seconds.
what can we do to ensure that you're more tip-top than coming late?
Well, I guess I didn't think actually with that bothered before, but it's good to know get there.
Okay.
Struggling.
Yeah, of course, because what do you think the impact is if it continues? What are the consequences?
Making some changes. How things are going.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want that to happen. I really don't want this conversation to happen again. So, can you go back to work and get on with your bloody job?
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. Okay, thank you. So how did you find that?
I don't know if I want to cry. She's so kind.
Okay, so what was kind about Anna? What made you feel that?
Understood.
Okay, how did she understand?
Because she went about it in a really good way, because she didn't make me feel awkward about it. It was just like, I want you to share how you feel about things, what's going on. It was just caring.
Okay,
I felt like she cared about me.
and how did you? How did you find that, Anna?
Well, I approached it from the point of view of, look, I've got some concerns about you. I've seen changes over the last couple of months that are out of character. You don't seem your normal cheerful self. Can you talk to me about what's going on, type of thing? And then I sort of, after she'd opened up, went down the road of, okay, well, that's fine, but these are the implications from a work perspective, impact on the rest of the team, so on and so forth. So we sort of then had a conversation around, well, let's look at how we can change that, or, you still need to deliver your job, but we can work together to try
And I felt good
solve
about
that.
that. I felt like, actually, let's do that. It's good.
What was also interesting watching you is looking at you as well, how you're mirrored in your body language, which is actually really key, and not a lot of people could do that, but it's a skill actually to have, because you're both, that will automatically make Laura feel more comfortable and more safe. And actually your tone as well, you were very softly spoken, you were really listening to what Laura said, you were asking very soft questions, because it was obviously a difficult situation for Laura. So you were very empathising with that.
And I was thinking, to start with, I don't know what that brief says. She might come out really angry. Which is kind of why I went in with that one to start with.
Okay. Great, well done. You two.
I was just being mean to him.
Yes, I could hear you weren't giving very much.
And it's hard, isn't it? Because you know that you're going to react in the right way, obviously for us.
Okay.
But you were very good.
Thanks.
You're very relaxed.
Yeah.
And definitely, asking things in the right way and not being too pushy. Listening actively.
Is there anything that you would have done differently?
I think the bit that I probably kind of found tough was the initial kind of breaking her in, talking and just general, making her feel comfortable and safe. The bit that I think you've got to be careful with these conversations is how long you leave it until you talk about that subject that's at hand, like that she's late and she's behaving in an unprofessional manner. I felt like I should have come up with it, I should have said it sooner.
Okay.
So that's my only reflection, maybe, that I could have sort of, because if you talk too much and it's a bit like, what am I doing here? know what's going on.
loses its impact.
Yeah, it's a bit like, and I started like, you okay? You sure you're okay? Everything okay? I was like, right.
So what can help you to make sure that if you have that conversation again, that wouldn't happen?
I think just, I know it's preparation, almost like kind of talking it through in my head, of how, maybe even rehearsing that particular line of how I would frame that, or what question I would ask to expose that.
Yeah, absolutely. So delving deeper, and then still, if you're not getting anything back,
Then say it, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you come to a resolution?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of so-so. Yeah.
Okay. And did you too? Yeah. Courageous conversations as well are going to be like a roller coaster. So you are going to, at some point...
Not always happens.
Pardon?
Sorry.
Oh, that's right. No Alton Towers.
No, not at Alton Towers. But can you imagine the courageous conversation that the Alton Towers manager is probably having to have quite a lot of? But that is a really good example.
Yeah.
You know, actually, that's happened. It shouldn't have happened. There were things that were showing that it was going to happen, and they still carried on. So potentially, yeah, that is huge. But it's a really good point though, because it will be like that, and you're going to go up and down, and it depends on your personality and how you prepare for it and how you tackle it as to how it goes. So be prepared for it to not always go in the direction that you want it to, because it will change at times.
I think it's time as well, time frames to build up to things. You can kind of create an environment that will make it easier to do it as well. Because I think about some of our managers who perhaps don't focus on that side of their job as much.
Yeah.
They actually put the effort in beforehand to build a relationship. They're going to find it a lot easier to tackle whatever circumstance comes up, rather than it being out of the blue, which
The
is
more you get
probably
to know
what a
that
lot of us do.
person, you know their emotional
Yeah.
reactions.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for doing that exercise. Later on in the second half, we're going to be looking at the more emotional side and how we manage those reactions as and when they come up. So this part we've looked at the preparation, how we tell that story, how we listen correctly, and this afternoon is going to be looking more on the emotional side and how we manage that as and when it comes up. Okay, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.